We have added tab navigation on our Android project. We are now navigating between 3 different views, 3 different tabs, and navigating through a toolbar button to the new deliveries page. During this section, we're going to do the same thing on iOS. And we're going to start by adding the tabs. So I'm here on the main.storyboard file that comes with every iOS file, where we have already defined 2 views that are bound to a navigation controller. Now we have to add a tab bar controller. That is the controller for the tabs. And it's going to work more similar to how the navigation controller works than to how a view controller works. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. I'm going to navigate to the toolbox. And in here, I am going to search for tab bar controller. It's going to be in the controllers and objects section. Make sure you select tab bar controller and not tab bar only. These are 2 different things. I'm going to drag the tab bar controller into the design, and notice that it comes with a lot of things. So I'm going to move this just a little bit to the right, so it's not above any other design. And notice that it comes with 2 view controllers in addition to the tab bar controller itself. So like I said, it's going to work more like the navigation controller. It will need view controllers bound to it, each of which is going to be one of the tabs. Notice that each of the view controllers has an item. It has a bar at the bottom of the screen, which is going to be the tab bar itself. And then each item, each view controller that is bound to the tab bar controller is going to represent one tab. And by default, we're going to see 2 view controllers bound to this tab bar controller. So the tab bar controller by itself, it's not really going to be displayed. The views are going to be coming from view controllers independently, very similar to what we have on Android, where we have a linear layout or a layout itself that contains a tab layout, which in this case could be similar to the tab bar controller, and then it's going to be switching between fragments. In the case of iOS, it's going to be switching between view controllers. And of course, the view controllers can have anything. They will just be defining one item that is going to be setting the tab that is going to be displayed in the tab bar. So as you can see, it is super simple to add tabs to our iOS project. So let's go ahead and navigate to that new tab bar controller. But in here, we have to perform some evaluation first, because we're going to be navigating to it from the login page. In fact, let me reposition this register view. I'm going to position it right above the login view. And I'm going to move my tab bar controller closer to the login view. And to this tab bar controller, the user is going to be navigated after pressing the sign in button. So I'm going to control drag from the sign in button. I'm going to drop on the tab bar controller, not on any of its view controllers, in the tab bar controller itself, and I'm going to display show. But of course, we are not going to be navigating to the tab bar controller as soon as we press the sign in button. We have to make an evaluation first. And the evaluation is if the user itself has been logged in. And we are already performing that evaluation, except if we navigate immediately, that navigation is still going to happen. So what we need is to set an identifier to this seg. And this seg can be called login seg. So let's learn how to make that evaluation. That evaluation has to happen from the view controller itself, the default view controller that we had from the beginning, and that is controlling the view for the sign-in page. In here, we are already making the evaluation and displaying an alert when the user was successfully logged in. We're even evaluating in the prepare for seg if a certain navigation is the one that is going to happen, and then we're setting some value to the destination view controller. This time, we don't only have to evaluate what seg or what navigation is going to happen and act accordingly, we have to evaluate if the seg, if the navigation has to be performed at all. For this, we will need to override another method, which is the should_perform_seg method. This is also going to have the seg identifier. It's going to be easier to access this time because it's directly the string itself, and it's usually going to be returning true. For most of the navigations, we always want to perform the navigation itself, so we're going to be returning true by default. But we're also going to be evaluating if the seg identifier is equal to the login seg that we have just added from the view controller to the TabBarController. If this is true, first we have to evaluate if the user has already logged in. So I am going to have a class level variable of type boolean that is going to be called has logged in, and that by default is going to be false, and it's not going to be true until the user has successfully logged in. So here in the if statement, where I am creating an alert that says success and welcome, I am going to set the has logged in to be true. And it's this value, the one that I want to return in this evaluation. So if this is true, the navigation will be performed. If it's not, the navigation won't be performed. Everything evaluating the should_perform_seg only when the seg that is going to happen, the navigation that is going to happen, is the one that has the login seg as the identifier. Okay, so let's try this out on the simulator. So here's the app up and running, and of course first we have to log in. I am going to use one of the users that is already registered. I'm going to click on sign in, and what is going on in here is that the should_perform_seg evaluation occurs immediately when the has logged in value is still false, and of course the login is going to take a bit to be evaluated. So when we click on OK, we are still not navigating. Now following this, if we click on sign in again, the has logged in is already true, so we get navigated immediately. And we see that we do get navigated, and we have two items, item 1 and item 2 for each of the view controllers that we have by default. But we have a problem because we don't get navigated immediately. There is a very quick way in which we can solve this, and that is to call the should_perform_seg evaluation again after we have logged in. So right before displaying the alert, I am going to execute programmatically the navigation again, the seg. For that, all I have to do is call the perform_seg method, which is going to be requiring the identifier. The identifier is going to be the seg that I want to perform, in this case login seg. So I'm going to pass it as a string, and it's going to require the sender, which is going to be this. So this is programmatically going to execute the navigation again. And every time this navigation happens, the prepare_for_seg is also going to be evaluated, except this time we're not evaluating anything for the login seg. But the should_perform_seg is also going to be executed. And this time, if the login was successful, the has logged in is going to be true. So let's try this one more time. So I'm going to sign in again, but this time the evaluation is still going to happen immediately after pressing the button, the first time the seg is performed, but it's also going to execute when we programmatically call the seg, when we call the perform_seg method from the event handler of the click of the sign in button. So if I click on sign in, the navigation only executes after the login was successful. And you can see the success alert. And we are still perfectly navigated, and we see that we have still the same items, so we have successfully navigated to the TabBarController. In the next lecture, we're going to add our own view controllers, because currently we have two empty view controllers that are called item 1 and item 2, which makes no sense currently. And we're going to add our own icons to these tabs.